So let's conclude this week by looking at some basic input and output in Java. So right at the beginning, our very first program in Java was to print hello world. So we have an idea about how to print in Java. So we use this println function, which takes an argument and prints it out on a new line. And we said that system is a public class which has these input output things, and in particular it has an output stream. So we are printing with respect to that. So how would we do the converse? How would we feed data to a program? The simplest way to do this is to use the console class. So the console class behaves pretty much like the Python input function, which reads an input from the keyboard, right? So this is how you do it. You create an instance of the console class, and then it has two built-in functions. It has a read line and a read password. So just like the input function in Python, the read line and the read password allow you to display some prompt to the user to indicate what is expected. The difference between these two is only that when the user types something in response to read line, the user will see it. Whereas with a password, as you know, when you type a password or something sensitive in any application, it just prints stars or dots or something invisible. So a read password will not echo the input in a readable form. Read line will read it. There's another subtle difference between these two, which is that the read line will return a string as you expect. It will return everything until the user presses return. So the entire line will be read as one string. Whereas in terms of a password, it will be returned as an array of characters. So it will contain all the individual characters in a character array. So this is the difference between read password and read line. So one echoes, one does not echo, one returns a string, one returns an array of characters. So this reads one line at a time, and we know from Python that then you have to take that string, split it, convert it into int and all that, which is a little bit of a nuisance. So Java does have a more flexible way of doing this using something called a scanner, right? So a scanner can be created by, so remember we had system.out, so you can associate with a scanner correspondingly with system.in. So you create a new scanner by telling it to scan from the input, right? So this is you tell the scanner which stream to read from. So you are telling it to read from system.in, and now once you have this scanner, you can parse the input in more flexible ways. You could of course read the entire line and get a string exactly like the console read line, but you can also read the next block as an integer or as different data types, right? So you have more granular control over reading the input. So if you want to be flexible, you can use the scanner. If you want a very generic way of inputting data to your program, use the console class. This password reading is not available in the scanner. So if you want to read passwords, or you want to allow the user to type something which is invisible to the user, in that sense some sensitive data, then you must use the console class. You cannot use the scanner class. On the other side, if you want to display something, we already saw the println, which is print line, which prints the argument and goes to a new line. So just like the print statement in Python, what this effectively does is it takes its arguments and converts it to string. So you can println more than one thing, right? It's not just one argument in general, but it could be a sequence of arguments. So each of them, if it is a string, it prints it as a string. If it is not a string, it will convert it to a representation which can be seen as a string. So a number 7 will become the character 7, okay, and so on. So this is what, and the key thing is this ln part, right? It goes to a new line. So if you don't want a new line, then there is just a print, right? System.out.print, which is essentially the same behavior as system.out.println, except it will stay on the same line. So the next print will continue where this print. So if you want to write things one after the other on the same line, then you can use system.out.print. And finally, if you really want good control over how your values are displayed, there is something called printf. Now this again is something inherited from C. So printf, F stands for formatted. If you remember the hello world of the C example that we did in the very first class, that uses printf. So printf stands for formatted output. So in particular, you can say display this integer in 2 spaces, display this floating point with 3 places after the decimal, and so on. So we will not get into too much detail because it's not something very relevant to the kind of programming language concepts we want to illustrate in this course. But if you read the documentation, you can figure out how to use printf to take variables. So in Python also we have formatted string output. You can create a formatted string and then print it. So it's pretty much the same principle, and many of the conventions used for formatting are all inherited from the C printf, so they are pretty similar across all these languages. But the very specific way to use it, you should look up the documentation so that you get it right.